Title today, by the way, I'm a Roman, sono romana, but I am actually originally from provincia di Cosenza, so proud di Calabrese and Romana as well. And I was born and raised in Italy. I came to this country for the first time when I was 23 years old. And I haven't been able to live since then. I mean, I haven't decided where I want to be, but anyway. So my title today is There the Stars from the Sky, Faith and Poetry in Tina De Rosa's Chicago Writings. So again, I will have to go back to Tina De Rosa because I think she's an extraordinary, universal, classical writer, and we have to really promote her work more than anything else. Tina Marie De Rosa was born in 1944, died in 2007, was raised in Chicago's West Side Italian neighborhood, Taylor Street. She attended the Holy Guardian Angel School, a parish school founded by the Scalabrinians in 1903, and St. Mary's High School. In 1966, she completed a bachelor's degree with a concentration in sociology, where, guess where? Magdalen College of Loyola. In 1977, she completed a master's degree in English with a concentration in creative writing at the University of Illinois at Chicago, in the school, in the university that was built out of her own neighborhood. In 1988, De Rosa published the novel Paperfish, which was translated into Italian in 2007 as Pesci di Carta, a few months after the author died, unfortunately. It was taken on by the feminist press in 2003, but perhaps what is less known about De Rosa, and that's what's going to be the concentration, my focus today, is that as a freelance writer, she also wrote the biography of Bishop John Baptist Scalabrini, titled, in fact, Bishop John Baptist Scalabrini, Father to the Migrants, published 7 years after Paperfish. And this was done while she was a freelance writer. What is the legacy of the Catholic faith among the Italians in Chicago for De Rosa? And that's the overarching theme. I'm also interested in finding poetry and miracles, and you will see how. Italian women for De Rosa are the embodiment of the faith that they brought with them from Italy. In Paperfish, she describes how, and I quote, the dark-skinned Italians, the Italians are dark-skinned for De Rosa, moved slowly down the quick little street to kneel in the church. The street never got too small for them. There was always another corner for the new baby. Move the laundry basket. The church never got too small for them because only women attended. De Rosa seems also keenly aware of the positivist, stereotypical notions present in the sociological discourses surrounding the Italians in Chicago. We heard great papers, especially Professor Lombardi was a really interesting description of Lombroso's and Sergi's and the positive school that described the Italians really as criminals. So in describing the great wave of peasant emigrants departing from Italy in the 19th century, De Rosa expressed this awareness by stating that, and I quote, they do not know that in 100 years, sociologists will make statistics of their lives, unquote. These communities, initially described as highly dysfunctional and disorganized by the sociologists, became the focus of De Rosa's narration in Paperfish, also in order to readdress their image. Departing from a sociological approach, De Rosa writes about the intimate, domestic, and private life of an Italian-American family in Chicago. The poetic intention is especially on women as they live in a world of their own, isolated from their Italian roots, and that's my contention, not yet grounded in an organic, cohesive community. By privileging the perspective of a young protagonist, Carolina, the artist as a young girl, absolutely, and her little sister, Doriana, who is affected by a mental and linguistic disability, the novel adopts a highly fragmented and non-linear narrative structure that veers away from stereotypical depictions of the Italians in Chicago, as either as picturesque characters, pasta eaters, or as deviant criminals at worst. In the absence of any pretense of objectivity in linear narrative, what we readers are left with is this unexpected poetic beauty that Susanna has so beautifully emphasized. A language that in fact is there in spite of the dejection of the Taylor Street surroundings. So this, and I want to say something, there is a long tradition in American literature, this is an American writer, about the aesthetic and poetic potential of urban poverty. William Carlos Williams is said to have inaugurated the genre of the urban pastoral, and at least one of his early poems in this genre, and I would like to read it, but I don't have time, 1913 poem by William Carlos Williams. It's entitled Sicilian Emigrant Song, and he pays homage to the Sicilians. But the Rosa's version of urban pastoral, if we want to adopt this term, is not simply celebratory. Her lyricism conveys the need for a poetic contemplation of a culture fully entrenched in the mysticism of the natural world linked to its peasant origin. The purity and quasi-mystical quality of this faith, embodied in paper fish exactly in the figure of the matriarchal grandmother, Doria, is endangered in the New World. And I think that's also because this novel is so fragmented. The Rosa finds in poetic language the tools to voice her vision of the innocent and disappearing sacredness of Italian popular religiosity. And now I want to move a little bit more on her biography of Bishop John Baptist Scalabrini. We heard from the Scalabrinis by Professor Candeloro. I won't go too much into what they've done in Chicago. I will actually talk a little bit about their Italian legacy. The Rosa's narrative is fairly linear, as a very traditional biography. She narrates John Baptist Scalabrini's ordination to priesthood in his native Como, Lombardia, a small village near Como. His work as a pastor of the Church of San Bartolomeo in Como, his appointment as Bishop of Piacenza, and his founding of the Missionaries of St. Charles. As we know, the Scalabrini fathers in Chicago encouraged the maintenance of the Italian culture, of the language, as a way to keep the identity of the community. Their history is essentially, as Professor Candeloro has rightly said, the life of the Italians in Chicago and their institutions. Now, the Rosa devotes many pages of her biography of Bishop Scalabrini to, and I quote, the great and somber exodus of the peasant population of Italy, the stoic march towards another land, unquote. And Bishop Scalabrini, and that's what interests the Rosa, actually anticipated the doctrine expressed in the encyclical Ex Sol Familia, which we heard a beautiful paper by Daniele Battisti yesterday, by Pope Pius XII in 1952, 60 years before Ex Sol Familia. Scalabrini believed that immigration was a law of nature, a formal renewal of the miracle of creation, and the Rosa is very interested in that. In Scalabrini's speech delivered in 1898 in Turin, on the occasion of the exhibition of sacred art, the bishop noted that, and I quote from Bishop Scalabrini, "Seeds migrate on the wings of the wind," and hear the poetry. "Plants migrate on the waves of seas and rivers from continent to continent. Birds and other animals move from place to place, but even more do human beings migrate, sometimes in groups, sometimes alone, and in so doing are always the free instruments of divine providence," unquote. Scalabrini was a fairly progressive supporter of migration at the time when migration, the Italian state, was trying to curb it down. There was a fairly tough law passed by the government of Francesco Crispi, liberal government, 1882, law number 5266, which actually made all male Italians living in Italy deserters of the Italian army, and therefore criminals. Bishop Scalabrini had advocated for free immigration in order to, and he was a very practical man, by the way, to better protect the immigrants from the evil of exploitation, the many abuses by ship company agents that came with lax recruitment. Scalabrini was also famously against assimilation. His motto was Religione e Patria, for religion and for country. Put religion at the center of the historical development of the Italian national character, of ethnic and national identity. He writes in 1879, our immigrants must preserve the nationality to preserve the Catholic religion that otherwise would be lost, and vice versa. Religion and patria are inseparable, unquote. For the Scalabrinians, therefore, the preservation of Italian patriotic traditions was a tool for the preservation of the Catholic faith. Catholic education in the United States also meant for the bishop literacy and education. I think that's why we're here. Such message could not ring hollow to the ears of such highly educated woman poet as Tina De Rosa. In my view, De Rosa's biography of Bishop Scalabrini is motivated by the intimate connection De Rosa believed it exists between faith and writing, between belief, the sacred nature of life, and poetry. In her biography of Bishop Scalabrini, De Rosa emphasized how the natural environment of the peasants of Italy contributed to their religious experience. I have a long quote, I think I will skip. Blessings were said over food, over water. The peasants standing under the looming trees whose leaves were larger than the face of a child knew that everything must be returned to God for his blessing. Living in America, living in the cities, the Italian immigrant could barely breathe. It is hard to see angels in trees or saints at the crossroads when you are living in a tenement in New York City or Chicago. Seeing angels in trees or saints at the crossroads is a vision that can only be achieved through religious devotion or poetic rapture, artistic rapture, as our writer has told us today. The raptures of the art in the churches of Rome is something very familiar. As a poet and writer, De Rosa identifies Bishop Scalabrini's spiritual force as being drawn from the compelling power of his writings, almost as if writing had a thaumaturgical function, the power to create miracles. And so that's why we have a miracle here for Bishop Scalabrini. De Rosa says, as he writes, the priest is evolving into a bishop, like an embryo into the child. So it's also the miracle of birth. De Rosa describes the moment when Bishop Scalabrini begins to write in 1872 his lectures on the First Vatican Council, later delivered in the Cathedral of Como, as a moment of suspense. She describes all the details of the natural and physical environment surrounding the bishop. The weather, the stillness of the trees, the light on his wooden desk and the shadow of the light. All of these narrative details really create a miracle. They introduce the mystery of a miracle tale. I'm almost done. Writing is also, so therefore, I think I'll skip this. I want to go to my conclusion. I don't want to take time for the other. In conclusion, De Rosa's portrayal of Bishop Scalabrini's life and faith is in part also a narrative of her own faith, an aspect of De Rosa's complex life and as a poet and writer that is sometimes overlooked. She writes about the bishop, he knew that faith is the treasure and that part of the measure of faith is poetry. One must not be afraid to leap into the poetry of belief. Without it, the world would fall into darkness and disenchantment. Earthly treasures might, with great pain or great ease, be set aside. Lose the poetry, and we might as well tear the stars from the sky. Unquote. This poetic vision, which De Rosa sees as being a key component of the legacy of Bishop Scalabrini's faith and writing, is first and foremost also De Rosa's legacy to us. in the spirit of her celebration of poetry, faith, and imagination, as an homage to the contribution of these extremely compelling Italian-American women writers, and really classical writers, I would like to end my talk with an encouragement to my students here in the audience, to all students here, to faculty and to the academic community of Loyola and at large, to see angels in the Chicago trees. Saints at the crossroads of Chicago streets. Or in other words, to not lose sight of the poetry emanating from our inner life and the poetry present in the world surrounding us. As Tina de Rosa elegantly put it, lose the poetry and we might as well tear the stars from the sky.